like long periods of time without actually attacking the problem is probably like going to do more damage in the long run, right? I mean,
Ladies and gentlemen,
you are now about to witness
the journey that is the Life Choices Podcast.
Yeah!
So how does one keep the lines of communication open with their spouse?
Well, I don't know if there's like a right answer for that. I feel like sometimes you have to just say the things that the other person doesn't necessarily want to hear. Like, I know, like, my wife will remind me of something that I don't want to do, or, you know, those kind of things. I think you just have to do it. You just have to keep it open, you know?
So you can't, like, because there's all different types of marriages and communications. And I find that, like, sometimes couples, I guess, get to a point where, which you don't want to, which, you know, one might resent the other one because they change the way they act or feel towards the person. Mm-hmm. I'll use an example. I have a friend, two friends married, and he had they had an honest conversation once because so I was sitting in a bar one night, 3 or 4 of my friends, younger guys, all married, you know, mm-hmm. to, you know, younger girls. And I'm sitting in the bar. I'm the oldest guy, right? And I'm the single one. And they're having this conversation about sex, about how their husbands, you know, they basically said, Bradley, when our husbands were hanging out with you, they were out fucking all the time, right? And I go, wow, I don't know how to answer this. I'm like,
I feel like this is a loaded question.
Yeah, I was like, well, we were all out enjoying life. And they're like, well, we talk all the time. And it's like, we're not getting fucked anymore. And I'm like, oh, well, the only thing I could suggest in that is maybe talking to them and finding out why. But that's what you're saying, right? Sometimes you have to say the thing that you don't otherwise want to say.
It's kind of like any sort of, like, it's like any hurdle you encounter in life. Like, if a hard time comes up and you feel like, you know, obviously there's subtle ways to, like, kind of hint at something that you might not like be feeling in the moment or whatever, you know, but at the end of the day, just getting right to the point is kind of the best way. Like, rip the Band-Aid off, I guess. Like, you know, if you're not happy with your partner or they're not happy with you, the best bet is to put it out there so you can work it out. Because excuse me, I feel like going like long periods of time without actually attacking the problem is probably like going to do more damage in the long run, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it is with anything. So, I mean, in my opinion, I think me and my wife are still married and we're still trucking because it's really just, we don't keep, like, we might be quiet for like a day over some sort of argument, but at the end of the day, we come back together and talk it out the following day. And I just think, you know, maybe not enough people do that kind of stuff.
If you don't talk about what's really bothering you, that's kind of where maybe like the resentment or anger can start festering within.
And it almost creates like a scar tissue kind of to the soul. I feel like if you don't, I mean, we don't really have that problem. Like, you know, I can tell something's bothering her, and then usually I don't have to wait very long to find out what it is. Usually, you know, it's and I kind of appreciate that. You know, I don't always want to hear what it is, but I appreciate that about her. She knows that that's the best way to, you know, attack problems is to get right to it
head on.
Yeah.
The one of the couples, you know, I'd followed up with the gentleman after the fact, like maybe a couple months. And I said, how things going? Like what's, you know, I said, this is what happened that night. And he said, well, no, it was great. We sat down and we had like an honest conversation, mm-hmm. and we agreed that after it, that we would always be that honest. And he said, and she rebutted pretty much the same thing. He said, when you looked a certain way when we got married, mm-hmm. you don't physically look that anymore.
Oh, geez.
So that's a hard one for anyone to hear or anyone to say. Mm-hmm. But she rebutted, well, you don't either, right? Because he also hadn't been working out and had a bit of a
They kind of went down the wrong path.
Yeah, well, I think comfortability came in, and I was in a relationship, and I didn't see it until I got out of the relationship. Like, I really gained weight in my stomach. She also gained weight, so we were both like unaware because all we did was sit around, watch movies, eat takeout, and like we got thicker.
You're not training for a new relationship.
No, not at all. But they had that honest conversation, and they both said, "Well, listen, let's never get to that point. Mm-hmm. So if something's bothering us, let's say it right away and be and they've said since then their marriage has never been better because they have that honesty."
That's good.
Piggybacking on what you said there with the knowing, and I think it's both men and women, but with my girlfriend, I know instantly because we talk, because we're long distance right now. So we talk like 4 or 5 times a day. Mm-hmm. And I know instantly demeanor, energy through the phone. I know if something's up.
Yeah, tone.
Everything. And whether or not it's something to do with me, you know what I'm saying? Like, I always hope it's not me because I know I live my life very honestly and very focused on her. So like, I think before I do anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, how would my action affect her emotion? But pulling it out of her sometimes is a bit tough because she doesn't necessarily always want to say what it is. And I always, you know, it takes some finessing sometimes, but I always say like, listen, babe, just say it, rip the Band-Aid off. Like you said, once you say it, you're going to feel better. We're going to figure out, and we're going to figure out a solution. Regardless what it is. Is it your life, your friends, your work, your whatever? Is it us? Is it me? You can start filing it down to see where the solution is. And I think that's what I'm learning being in a long-term, long-distance relationship is really like the communication is a massive thing. Yeah. And I
even in a up close one too, but especially in that circumstance, but when you share a space with someone like, and you live together, like my wife and I, like that's super important too, you know.
And you have multiple kids, you know, which
just 2.
Well, that's multiple. It's more than one.
I always admire the people that have more than 2 kids because I'm like, wow, you know, like that's either you're checked out or you're just a really just strong human, you know. You see these big families and you're like, what, how does this work? Do like the big ones take care of the little one? Like,
I think there probably is a level of that. You know, I'm only one of 3 and the eldest to me is 7 years apart. And there was a little guidance, but not a lot of like what you see with like maybe 6 children, where you actually do see like maybe the eldest or the second eldest kind of parenting a little bit with the youngest ones, which I'm sure the parents themselves like, you know, appreciate. The other let's segue into the next one, which is how do you deal? I don't want to say deal. How does one survive through the emotions of pregnancy and at the same time the realization of becoming a father, whether it's the first time and maybe obviously different a little bit on the second time?
Well, it's definitely different the second time. But so my example of this is mine isn't positive, and it's nothing that my wife did. It was actually what I did wrong. Is I had a terrible like career going, like not terrible, literally it wasn't terrible. I was working too much for both of my wife's pregnancies. Like I just wasn't there, available physically, emotionally, like I should have been. And that I feel like now would be I feel like I'm a little old to start having another baby again, but I think that I would probably be really good at that time, like with a third child. Like if I had that opportunity again, I think it would be, you know, a little different of a story. But like me, I was going to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and coming home at 11 o'clock at night, like 5, sometimes 6 days a week, pretty much through both of those pregnancies. So for me, I know what I did wrong there, you know.
But at the same time, there was obviously a thought of financial gain in order to support.
Yeah. But if my head was screwed on right, I would have gotten out of what I was doing and been more what I do now is, you know, it's the same idea as far as the finances are concerned. It's just my time is just, there's just so much more of my time.
Time management.
Like that would be very, very convenient for a pregnant wife now.
Right.
You know, but not so much like when she was carrying both the kids. That was what I worked. It was crazy.
So you feel that you were almost not there.
Yeah.
During it.
Yeah. And when my kids were both really young, I was still doing the same shit. And I was just like, I just knew something had to change. It's just, I had like a certain level of commitment to not even like the restaurant I worked at. It was more my, the chef I worked for was like, we had a personal relationship too. So like, I couldn't just like leave that job because it was getting tougher at home. I had to kind of at least finish the season to be able to leave and then kind of figure out what was next. But I don't know, that was a very like stressful time in my life. I feel like I aged a lot over that, like probably like 6 or 8 months, like that last like stint in a restaurant, basically like going hard at it for like, you know, a good 60 hours plus every week. So,
I mean, it sounds like you were doing what our parents' generation did.
Yeah.
Like that was
exactly.
pretty much like dad, my whole life, I remember, and obviously I would assume it was even more so, you know, when I wasn't born and when my brothers were babies, but he would wake up and 6 a.m. and probably be gone by earlier, you know, 7 a.m. because he was starting his own law practice. And he would come home, not super late because my dad always made it home for dinner more times than not, unless he was traveling for clients. But I would say like 6 o'clock, you know, but that's like 12 hours of the day that my mom was probably awake shortly after. And yeah, like I don't, you know, I've never had that conversation, or maybe I should, you know, were her parents around or were his parents around? Because I know they all lived in Toronto.
Yeah, just see how that was for them. Because I remember my mother didn't. She had kind of a hard time. She didn't have a hard time. I mean, she managed, but it was stressful. It was stressful because like my stepfather was working, and then sometimes not around on the weekends so much too. So
right,
it was definitely. That's a hard time because like as a man, I feel like you don't really know what to do, and like everyone can tell you, but like it's kind of almost like we don't all necessarily learn by being told.
Hell no. You need to be
like
in
you
the
could
mix.
tell me how to put my first diaper on.
Right.
I could even watch a YouTube, but I'm like, won't retain that information
until you do it.
I've actually like gone through the whole process and I'm comfortable with it after. You know, it's a strange way my mind works. Like,
no, I mean, we're creatives. We work in the kitchen. Like, we didn't learn how to cook by reading a book.
No,
we learned by sitting in there and getting yelled at if you didn't put it up properly.
Now I can read a cookbook and execute pretty much anything in a cookbook because it's like I understand like the whole science behind it. It's just been so long. It's like ingrained in who I am. But like before, you could have given me like an Asian cookbook. I wouldn't know the process of like what temperature, you know, medium temperature is not medium temperature in two different cultures. You know what I mean? It's like I understand all that stuff now. But
so what being that you were gone for most of the days of pregnancy, both times, what types of situations, conversations, emotions, I don't like using the word deal with, but what situations, emotions did you get to encounter? Did you get to experience from, you know, your wife not having you there?
Yeah. It was like, you know, we got along, but I think she probably had times where she just kind of like had to suppress. Like this is an example of like, you know, here we are years later. We'll talk about whatever, you know, you can't hold it in. But in those times she might have suppressed kind of her feelings. Like it would come out, but not, you know, probably as much as she would have, you know, wanted to express her frustrations and all that. So I don't know. I mean, you know, we all look back at our life, like kind of wish we could do certain things over, you know, but I can't change that part of it. But I do know that I could have been more supportive, could have been more there. And probably the whole, like the way I was working too, like I just didn't see a light kind of. So that too, I was, you know, kind of lost there. It was a hard trying time in my life for sure, you know. And I think she did the best she could with, you know, what we had going on. So
So there wasn't anything like it just kind of worked out. Communication was there when needed to be.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't like available though, you know, like when you work like that, you're fucking dead that
well, you're not even available when you're at home.
Yeah. You're useless that day, you know, lucky if I get around to mowing the lawn that week, you know?
Yeah.
It was just that wasn't what I should have been doing. I was kind of like almost out, and then I sort of started creeping back into the industry, and then just fucking dove right back in like an asshole, you know?
Wow.
And it's like, now I know I would never do that again. Like if I ever found myself in any sort of like hospitality arrangement, like where I was like employed, it would be like very different situation. Like I would not be like in there slaving in the kitchen, you know, not at all.
Now you say like if you had the opportunity, like if you were to have a third child, if that third child happened, you know, you've already made a shift in your work life.
Yeah, I've changed what kind of person I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have more time available and you still have the same means, if not more income to help.
Yeah.
What with the emotions of becoming a father, being that you're expressing to us that you weren't there physically or kind of mentally.
Yeah, it was a fucked up thing to do to a partner, honestly.
Right.
You know,
for more than a year, I want to say, like, what's the difference in age between the two?
18 months.
Okay, so almost.
Well, see, when my son was born, I had just opened a relatively large restaurant, and I got totally cooked. That was it. I was like, I'm done with this. I got to figure out something else. And so I backed away. I actually didn't work at all for a little bit. I was kind of like part-time at one of my friends' restaurants nearby here. And I don't know. I just kind of needed more money when my wife got pregnant with the second child. So I was like there half the time in the beginning of my son when he was born. And then the second pregnancy, I was getting into a restaurant that wanted 6 days. And I'm like, well, this is bullshit. If I'm going to do this anyway, I'm going to do this and make a lot more money. So I went and dove back in, like I said. And yeah, it's just, I was totally not there for that second like pregnancy kind of, I think.
So there was a little bit of time in the middle of the two.
Yeah, in the middle.
But as soon as the second pregnancy came around, it went right back to being.
Then, I mean, I only did that for that one, it wasn't even a year, because this is right when COVID started too. You remember we were fucking slamming too. Like restaurants were so busy here because DeSantis kept the state open. So you were looking at starting this job in the beginning of summer, right? And usually that's like kind of the slow good time to ease into, you know, a job. I was familiar with it already. I'd actually already worked at the restaurant, and it never was slow. It was just like, man, every night, 100 reservations. You're like looking at it in the middle of summer, like, what the fuck is this? Like, it's 4:30, our bar's packed, and we have 100 reservations in August. Like, what in the world is going on? And then, you know, there was like a lot of interesting things going on with all that. Like, you know, how there was all the benefits to like the business owners and stuff. Like, you know, there's a lot of things that went around with that. That was all like, that was a gross time for our country. I feel like a lot of people took advantage of that shit big time. And I don't know. That made it easier to kind of be like all done with it too. But I owed my friend that season. So as soon as like, I think like April, or it might've been May. I think it was May. When May rolled around, I was like, done. Gave notice, took my first catering job, and then based my notice around that very first event.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was the juggling of emotions that you got to experience? The thought first time around of becoming a father. What was that like? You know, you're not really there for your wife, I guess you're saying out loud, for the pregnancy, but at the same time you've got to be thinking like I'm going to be a dad soon. Like, what's that?
Well, that was it. It's kind of, for me, I don't know, I was like a kid until I had a kid. Like, I was a big grown ass man child, you know what I mean? Like,
I absolutely
just like walking around using 4-letter words every other word, and just like, you know, trying to make everyone laugh and like not taking too much serious. And then all of a sudden, here's this fucking they're so much smaller than they are on TV. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like they fit in your hand, and it's just like, wow. And then you're like, wait, what? I got to take this thing home today. Like, is anyone from here coming with us? Like, no nurse, none of that. And that's when it like sets in. But it's like surreal, you know. You get your first few months of, that's all you do is sit there and look at that baby with your partner. It's like a very cozy time in life. That was nice.
And like from everything I gather, like you get like you had 2 kids kind of back to back, kind of like forget about sleep, forget about organization.
Well, it was different. There was 2 different experiences. Actually, my son was a full night sleeper pretty quick. He, I want to say like maybe around 3 months, he was good through the night for the most part. And then my daughter, she stayed in our room until she was like almost a year old, like just didn't sleep through the night. That was hard too, because in the beginning there, like I was working that job and then not getting like anything more than like 1 full sleep cycle at best at a time. So, I mean, I can remember just feeling defeated, like mentally, like constantly just overtired, and then this job, and then pressure to be at home, and
So how did you overcome that defeatist feeling?
Well, I just did it. I just kept doing everything that I could do to, you know, I maintained the job. I assured my wife I was going to leave that job, but I just had to, I owed it to them to get to that point. You know, I committed to that. So I was like, I need to get through this, and then we'll take it from there after. So I think I just put my head down and kept working, you know, did whatever I could at home and did everything I could to just keep my job, you know, like get through it.
So with the communication with a spouse, and obviously we're taking, I guess, the male perspective from it, obviously, how much, because like, again, I can admit like the man child has, like, I'm 47 and I'm in what I would consider the really only one true relationship I've ever been in, because it's the most successful.
Yeah.
And it's the one that's going to, going towards the whole forever.
Yeah.
So being a man child, or just being an individual that's by himself all the time, and like you really get to do whatever you want, really the onus is on you regardless, but there's not really a worry of, I got to talk to someone before doing something. Did you find like in the early years of marriage, there was a part of you that kind of fought with that? Because now kind of conversations, I assume conversations have to be had about almost everything you're going to do.
Yeah.
Like you can't just quit a job because you feel like it.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily just take a job because you want to.
Yeah.
And that's just a job idea. Like how does that kind of, like, what experience or feeling goes into changing from the position of I can do whatever I want whenever I want to now I need to communicate? Like, do you feel that you kind of lost your own power?
No, because me and my wife are similar. Like we both kind of came from restaurants, you know, that's how we met. And we had like similar personalities. We had the same friend groups. Like it was easy for us to both be these like 2 big kids. She definitely started maturing a little faster than I did. But that came with her job's pretty professional, like what she does for a living. So like, you know, I would be dressed like this and she would be dressed in like how she went to work, you know, and I don't know. It's funny. But no, for me, it was kind of like in stages. I don't think that like life ever just, well, when you're having a baby, that's one thing. That's kind of like not, I wouldn't say dumped on you, because it's obviously, you know, it's coming and you have time to prepare, however, mentally. But like for me, my life never changed so dramatically early on in our marriage or anything that like I needed to like have a moment where I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And like push back, you know. It was kind of like, you know, you started out with the small things. We have a joint bank account now, you know, like the simple things that, you know, I actually see couples, I know couples that are married that have separate bank accounts still. It's kind of like, okay, but why? What's the point of that? It's like kind of awkward to me, actually. It's just like, just put it together. Like it's a team effort.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I got married and joined a team, you know?
Right.
And now my team is 4 strong, you know, unless you want to start counting the pets.
Right.
So it's like, no matter what, or what the circumstances might be, we sort it out as a team, you know?
So you never felt, and again, I have these conversations with certain guests because I'm taking the time now to process what my life is going to become because I'm wanting a team. I'm wanting that partnership.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I express it the same way. Like the only thing that is important to me right now is the team I have and the team I'm creating.
Yeah.
Nobody else matters in my world. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, I love my parent, my mom. I love my brothers. I love my closest friends. You know what I'm saying? Like the real close ones. But
you'd push them out in traffic for your team.
Well, I'm not saying I'm putting them out in traffic, but
No, I don't
I'm
really
saying
mean
like, you know,
take that.
Yeah.
but
I know what you're saying. Like
come first.
The first thing is the wife and hopefully the kids. And I'm wondering, being that I'm a man, and I know I've struggled in the past in relationships with letting go of that aspect of me of like, no, I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, if it comes kind of like in stages and you understand the importance of solidity with the person you're with, then maybe you don't have that feeling of I'm losing myself, which also in turn, you know, kind of amplifies what I talk about becoming the better you. You have to be okay with letting go of the old you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Home base is what's important.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that brings it back to the communication aspect of it, is and the open lines of communication. Well, thank you, Sam, very much. Once again, I always enjoy when you come by the podcast to have a quick chat with me. I appreciate it. I'm sure our following appreciates it. For everyone out there in the Life Choices land, thank you very much for coming back each and every week. We will see you next Tuesday here at 2 p.m. Much love, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You are now about
The Journey Life Choices podcast.